If kids and students who are high school and college aged are engaging with what I see as this feminist manifesto of our time, they are the leaders that will take that forward and turn that into action and into reality.
Hi, I'm Debra, executive coach, consultant, and founder of Do Better Executive Coaching and Do Better by Design. After years of leading in education and higher ed, often in spaces not built for me, I've turned those lessons into work that supports others. On this podcast, we keep it real. I sit down with artists, educators, entrepreneurs, and leaders to talk about legacy, healing, leadership, and the courage it takes to take up space without shrinking. If you're ready to lead with heart, live with intention, and take up space with no apologies, you're in the right place. Follow me for leadership gems, real talk, and reminders that you've got this. I just finished reading the book Erased. I gotta hold it up. What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us by Anna Malaika Tubbs. I mean, this book it explains so much. And if I had to endorse a book, I'm going to endorse this book. You have to read it. You have to read it, especially if you're a woman in leadership, a woman that's thinking about getting into leadership, a young woman that has aspirations but really needs to understand what the world is and how it works. You have to read this. I can't say enough about it, and I'm so excited that I get to talk to the author today. I wish that I had read this years ago. I wish that I understood how the system really worked and how I thought I was moving up the ladder and doing all the things that I could, but so much was stacked against me. And if I understood this a little bit more, the pain that I have endured and the disappointment that I've endured would have made more sense to me. It wouldn't have felt better, but it would have made more sense to me because I would have truly understood the system. So I'm so honored that today I'm joined by Anna Malaika Tubbs. She is an advocate, a consultant, an educator, and the author of The Three Mothers and her latest book, Erased, What the American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us. Anna doesn't just write books. And in this particular book, she writes the truth about patriarchy and what they try to hide from us. When her book launched just a few months ago, she reached out and offered to give me 200 copies to share with high school seniors. She believes that every young woman, especially women of color, deserves to see themselves in these pages. While I'm not a high school student anymore, I truly, truly saw myself in every bit of this book and on all of the pages. I'm so honored to have her as a guest today. This conversation isn't just about the book. It's about truth, leadership, and what it takes to speak boldly in systems that were not built for us. Let's get into it. Like I said, I just finished listening to your book this morning, and I wish that I had this book as a young woman. I don't know if you know, I grew up in Canada. I was born in New York. I was born in New York, raised in Canada, and then I moved back to New York when I was 23. And when I got into leadership, I thought I just had to work really hard. And I remember reading in your book about the ladder piece, and that really just hit me because I thought I was like doing all the things to move up the ladder. And so
Yeah.
I just want to say, even at the age I am at right now, thank you for this.
Thank you.
I've never read anything like this before, and it honestly brings tears to my eyes. It's beautiful. You did such a great job, and I
Thank
can't
you.
wait
Yeah.
to share it with everybody. And yeah, I just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You're trying to make me cry. I'm not gonna let you do
I'm sorry. I just wanted to really let you know how it landed for me. And
Thank you.
I
That means
I had you in my ear, so I'd be walking the dogs and listening to you, and it's is phenomenal. Um,
Thank you.
I like to start every podcast off by asking my guests, "How's your heart today?"
Hmm. My heart today. Let me really listen to it. Take a second. Yeah, happy, feeling joyful. I had another podcast interview this morning in Marina Del Rey, so I was in the car driving. I just got back. I am just grateful for the impact this book is having. And in between the interviews, got to play with my kids for a little bit. So joyful. But I also have to leave for a work trip today. So I am excited for that. And I hate being away from my kids. So it's like the duality of
Mm,
life.
mhm. I know in the book you had mentioned the reason that your kids, you really thanked your kids in this book. And you
Yeah.
also said being their mom is the greatest joy of your life. And so I'm wondering, as you were thinking about writing the books and even when you finished, what does this mean to be the author of this book and be their mom?
It's such an honor. I truly feel so honored, so blessed to get to live the life that I live. And I think because I always have such gratitude and such joy that I see that in my life at the forefront, it sometimes may seem as though I don't go through some of the harder parts of life and that, I don't struggle for the things that I have. But I think I just focus so much more on what even those harder experiences, like losing my mom 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, and being there with my husband when he lost re-election, and us growing up together in our relationship, and other people that were grieving, just all the harder things are also there. But when I can look at the two books that I've put out into the world and can look at the faces of these three beautiful babies, that I am so fortunate enough to have them call me mom. I think joy and hope and faith are just always at the forefront of my
Mm,
mind because it outweighs all of sad and painful and hard parts. And that doesn't mean that I avoid those things. It just means that I get to really lean on the
mm.
good. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's
I'm sorry to have heard about your mom. That is, I too have lost my mom, so I know that is not an easy. It's just not easy. It's not easy.
no. And grief is so hard always. It's just this layer of when it's the person who brought you into the world and the person that you called to lean on. And, especially as women and Black women, like we don't have a lot of people who baby us,
Hmm, hmm,
Uh, you lose the person who did that. It changes
hmm,
everything.
hmm. What would she think about your book?
Oh, she would have loved this book. So she was still alive when The Three Mothers
Hmm,
came out. And so it gave me such a gift because I was shouting her out on my tour, my virtual tour, and always saying, "Oh, I was always inspired by moms, even before I became a mom, because of my wonderful mom and all these things." And then the end of that year is when she passed away. And I was just grateful that I got to give her those shout outs, and she knew how much she had inspired
hmm,
everything. This book, however, even more so, she would have loved because she was always telling me kind of, this, not telling me, but also like asking me, like, what else do you want to do? Like, you can do anything. And to grow from The Three Mothers, this book opens it all the way, everything wide open. I think she would have been really proud. And so much of the theory in there, so much of the way I see the world is so obviously what she taught me that I think the whole time she was reading it or listening to it, she would be just clapping and saying, "Yeah, that's exactly what I taught
hmm,
you." And so proud of how I've built on what she
hmm.
taught me. So,
I think your both
yeah,
your parents, I think I was reading this or listening to you say about when they would watch the news and watch different, broadcasts of the news, but question everything,
yeah,
but bring their life experience into what they were watching. That really sounds a lot of how you write your book.
definitely. Their way of just approaching life and analysis and dialogue around world events and current events and how those things were always in context of history and all the different kind of players, right? If we're talking about nations and international relations, their way of seeing those things definitely informed me as a person, but particularly as a
Mhm,
researcher. I know you have to hear different perspectives. I know that you have to also, whenever possible, see things in person and see things for yourself and seek answers for yourself and question what you're being shown and who the dominant voices are. And I'm always so grateful for that because they modeled what that kind of discussion looks like. They didn't always agree with each other, but they brought their different experiences to the table, and they were both
mm.
lawyers, and so there was also a lot of argument. But my siblings and I saw that. Sometimes I will say some of the argument probably not healthy, but a lot of what they modeled was, "Hey, you have an opinion, your voice matters. Come to the table ready to debate. Have your receipts, have your evidence." And so with both my books, a lot of people comment on the fact that all the pages at the back are all the references and all the research and all the receipts because that really does matter. While I am somebody who values the accessibility of my work and I'm always thinking of how can I communicate with as many people as possible, that really inspires me. I am also always prepared. These are well-researched books, and I've done my due diligence, and I've looked at all the different sources, and I've questioned everything, and that's what I want my readers to do. I think it's what we need to do more on a national level. I don't think a lot of Americans are trained to think that way, and it definitely stems from how my parents saw the world and saw
Mm.
storytelling.
So I was fortunate enough to, well, be married to my wife, who then you also know that, and you offered to give me 200 books to give out to students where I work. Why was it important to do that, and why are you trying to get this book in the hands of so many young people?
Yeah. Young people so often are not given the opportunities to participate in these kinds of discussions, especially high school students, but of course also some college students. Because we tend to think that gender and race theory is somehow like this advanced work or that it can be seen as controversial. And we don't give young people the tools that they need to analyze what's happening around them. So they are witnesses to all of the ways in which these things show up in our daily lives. But then somehow the theory that they need to analyze it is too advanced for them, or that's how a lot of people see it. And so I was a teacher for 5 years and a college counselor. I taught 8th grade through 12th grade students in Stockton, California, and it was one of the most formative experiences of my life, seeing how brilliant these young people are, but also seeing how they are so ignored often and how so much writing is not geared towards them and their brilliance and really excludes them from participating in the discussion. And so, with the three mothers and with Erased, I've asked mentors of mine, friends of mine to give a little bit of money if they're willing
Mm,
to so that I can donate some of the books to those who might not have access to them, who might not be able to pay for them themselves, and to give those to young people as much as possible, as well as organizations serving
mm,
women. And so I think that that's how the dialogue continues. And especially for young people, if we can remove a barrier and simply give them a gift, that could be a moment that changes their
mm,
trajectory. I remember for me in college, we always had the 3 books that you're given when it's your freshman year. You get these 3 books that are just you're supposed to read them that summer. And those 3 books were really formative for me, and I wouldn't have even known about them had it not been that they were just on this list. And so I want to create those opportunities for students to engage with my work, but also because I think this book in particular, if kids and students who are high school and college aged are engaging with what I see as this feminist manifesto of our time, they are the leaders that will take that forward and turn that into action and into reality. And when you're at that age, you also have just this clear sense of justice. You don't yet have these other factors where you're thinking, oh, but like, what about my job? Or what about my kids? If I say this thing online, they stand so in the truth of the time. If you look back throughout history, it's always that age group who knew what was right, who are protesting against certain things. And I think right now is no different. Young people have a really clear sense of things that we're not doing well as a nation. And I want to give them a tool so that they're also very aware of how powerful they are, and therefore how many people are going to be trying to manipulate
Mm.
them so that they can kind of stand in their own power. So for many, many reasons, I just wanted young people to have the book for free.
That is generous and so not what we see, right? You write a book. I want to get paid for my book. In your last chapter, you really talk about the takeaways and what we can do. So I can see that that's in line with your mission of what this book is supposed to really be used for.
You are listening to the Do Better with Debra podcast with guest advocate, consultant, educator, and author Anna Malaika Tubbs. Make sure to visit dobetterexecutivecoaching.com and learn how you can lean into your power and lead with confidence, purpose, and joy. And now, back to the podcast.
So
Hmm.
when we turn to the last page, people my age or the young people, what do you want us to walk away with?
A sense of
Mm.
empowerment, truly, a sense of hope, a sense of optimism, and this feeling of I'm ready.
Mm.
I'm ready to do this all differently. I'm ready to live differently. I'm ready to question the thing that has been made so obvious to me at every turn. When I see it, I'm no longer going to question
Mm.
myself. I'm no longer going to hold myself back. And instead, I'm going to direct my energy towards this collective
Mm.
problem that we are facing. And I'm no longer going to turn to other people and see them as my enemies in this, but instead see so clearly how we've been tricked, all of us, and instead extend compassion to those who haven't yet had the experience of the book. I want there to be this feeling of like those who have read erased and those who
Mm.
haven't,
Mm.
like a different mindset, a different veil has been lifted, and we want other people to experience that shift as well, and less from this perspective where I think the conversation of patriarchy has so often turned very tug of war, very we're battling each other, very we're individually attacking each other, and more towards this is a system that we all need to combat. It's not helping any of us. And so you actually get to walk through life with a lot more peace.
Mm.
So many people ask me, how are you still so optimistic and happy and joyful to, even though you study these things so deeply and you know how horrific it is? Yes, when you know how horrible it's been and you've studied it, you're also really aware of how vulnerable it is and how my joy and creativity is the thing that is they're trying to rob from
Mm.
me. And so we all need to walk with more of that faith, especially at a time when nationally every single day feels very scary. Every single day feels confusing. If you can track what's actually happening and you have this tool that I'm giving you that says, this is why this decision is being made, and here's how we combat it. We lean into our creativity, we lean into our intuition, we lean into our interconnectedness, then we all can have that same experience of levity, as well as knowing that we are capable of doing something about it. So all of those feelings, I hope people walk away with
For
them.
sure, for sure. There's so many stories in your book, like things that I didn't even know. Clearly, a lot of research was done. What story didn't you know that really surprised you?
Oh, that is such a good question. The way I wrote this book, because when I initially pitched the idea to my editor, I was like, I want to write the go-to book for people understanding patriarchy in our nation. And she, said, yeah, I guess that's kind of true. There isn't like a go-to manual of understanding it in our day-to-day lives that isn't this like academic textbook. But when I sat down to write that, I felt really overwhelmed because it was just like, oh no, this is
This is
huge.
real. Yeah.
How am I gonna do this? Okay. So then I thought, all right, let me just start with like my mom's stories of like how she came to understand patriarchy in her life. And then each mini chapter, I just have to have faith it'll take me to the next chapter. And I'll do a really deep dive into a question I'm left with at the end of one chapter. And that will just work out. Hopefully all the stories that are meant to be in this book will be in this book. And even though patriarchy exists everywhere and in everything, those particular stories will give us this full go-to book. And so I say all that because I didn't know most of these stories that I wrote about. It was just that I asked a question at the end of a chapter that led me to do a deep dive and like a mini research project on each of the stories that I tell in the book. And so with my mom being born in Clarkston, Washington, by the end of her chapter where I'm talking about her as a little white girl and like how she was told that her brothers would be treated differently than she would be, etc. I then think to myself, okay, where did Clarkston, Washington get its name from? Oh, I think it's from the Lewis and Clark expeditions. Then I start looking up anything I can find on the Lewis and Clark expedition, and then I see that picture that I remember seeing in high school of Sacagawea pointing in a direction and Lewis and Clark are by her sides. And I think, well, that's propaganda. There's no way that there was a Native woman who was leading these white men and that they were just listening to her. So I do a deep dive into who made this painting and who were Lewis and Clark and why were they even on this expedition, and tell me more about Sacagawea. And so I didn't know a lot of those details. So basically, the experience that I give to the reader is really walking through the same kind of research steps that I took to build the book, to see those connections. And I've been really excited to hear a lot of readers say that when they pick up the book, they're not expecting to go in the many different directions that you go in to find out about patriarchy, but that really is how patriarchy presents itself. It is across time, it is across space, it is across industry, and it's just the questions that I ask that will take us to the next chapter so that readers themselves can also in their own lives say, oh, that's how I could put together a similar project. Where does it start with my parents? What did they believe? What were they led to believe? Where were they born? And who were the people who raised them? And what were the things that were happening nationally at the time? And that's how everybody could really write their version of how they came to see and understand the grasp of patriarchy in their own lives.
I mean, it should be a course. It is so good. And I hated history
Thank you.
in college. So I can't say enough about it. Um,
Thank
in
you.
my leadership journey, or even as my Black woman journey, I would say at times I have been told I'm too loud, I'm too much.
Mm,
I have shrunk at times, and sometimes it's
mm,
been really hard even to go to work because of how I was treated, the sexism, the racism, all the isms.
mm,
In your book, you talk about your husband and his role as mayor and being reduced to the wife and them wanting to film you cooking. You also talked about when you were pregnant and being catcalled and how do you continue to walk in your power, right? Like, I know your mom and your dad instilled a lot in you and probably your siblings, but just how?
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I'm almost trying to become a better student of this myself of myself. That's I'm going to explain what that means, because this is just how it feels like natural for me to live, which is to be aware of the systems that are in place that are asking other people to try to confine me, to place me into boxes and control me. And I think because I've always been such a student of patriarchy and these isms and like forms of exclusivity and discrimination, I'm always pretty hyper aware that it has nothing to do with me
Mm,
and everything to do with what I need to change. And maybe if I really did a deeper analysis, it's like, at what age did I become even more confident in that? Because as a little girl, I'm sure there were factors where I thought, oh no, I've done something wrong, or I need to make myself smaller or whatever. But I think those were always counteracted by a mom who was telling me constantly, you are like, my mom was so confident in her children, like almost to an extreme level where she was like, you are the best, like you are wonderful, you deserve all the best things, you are the most brilliant person in the world. Like those are the things that she filled our minds with constantly.
he was right.
But it was something that I really walked around with, this sense of like, I am wonderful, I am great. And so if other people are trying to tell me I'm supposed to be different in some way, let me just show them what they're trapped by, because I'm not trapped by it. They clearly seem to have some kind of issue that I'm not experiencing. So here's a perfect example. For instance, I have this high-pitched voice. I was born with it. This is just always how I've talked. And I was told many times, you need to lower your voice to be taken more seriously, which to me, I immediately identify as, well, that's a form of patriarchy. You want me to sound more almost like manly in order to be taken seriously as an
Mhm.
academic, or, and instead I know, oh no, that's just a system that I need to help you shift your mindset around what it looks like for somebody to be intelligent, or for somebody to deserve respect, or for someone to be treated with dignity, as we all should be. It shouldn't matter how I sound. You are indoctrinated with something that tells you what power looks like or who you're supposed to respect, that I am not indoctrinated with. And so I think I've just always been so acutely aware of what I'm coming up
Mm,
against that I realize I'm not the one that needs to shift, but I can help other people shift. And so I find it almost more entertaining than anything else. But I will say that I don't want to minimize some of the painful experiences I've had in the past where, as you mentioned, when my husband was elected and he was the youngest mayor of a major American city in all of American history. So there was a lot of attention on him. And people were trying to immediately cast me into the role of, you're the trophy wife. And they would always talk about my looks, and they didn't want to talk about my interests or my passions or what I've studied. It was always, he's the brains, you're the beauty. It was just always trying to cast us into these very binary roles. And had I not been, again, a student of this, I would have taken it all much more personally. But even though I had hyper awareness, that didn't protect me entirely from feeling some of the pain of erasure. And so in those moments where it does impact me, I think, okay, this isn't something that's only hurting me. So let me turn that feeling into something that's productive for others who might be experiencing this, or my students who might be watching me right now and waiting for my reaction. How do I make sure that I turn these moments into something that will shift the system and their realities for good? And the last thing I'll say about that is a story about just the small shifts that can happen when we respond to those moments. When our eldest was born, I was standing next to Michael at an event, and someone came up to us, and he says directly to Michael, ignoring me completely, and says, "Congratulations on the birth of your child," to Michael. And so I was sitting there and I just said, "Wow, Michael, I was not aware that you could give birth. Congratulations. I mean, that is huge." And I just kind of made it a joke. And this person then looked to me for the first time in the conversation and said, "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Congratulations to you." And so I think that there are some moments where you just have to turn it back on people and help them understand, like, the thing that was just said or the action that just was used to make me feel smaller. I want you to question why you thought that was okay and that was appropriate, rather than me take on the labor and the burden of that feeling that I'm just going to be carrying throughout the day. I'll at least share some of that burden back with you.
Because it's part of the system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Powerful tool. This book is a powerful tool. So many people have stories that they carry and they want to share, me included. But there's a fear of, like, how do we share it? How do we get it out there? How do we write our story? Is it good enough to share? Like, how did you overcome that piece, right? Because now you're in your
Yeah.
second one. So you had said, I pitched this to my publisher, and then I sat down and thought, like, how am I going to do this? But then you started to break it down, right? Like, you started to question, and then you answered the question. So are there any thoughts about or tips you can share with those that have stories that we feel that we want to share with others?
Yes, absolutely. It is, multiple steps. One, I want more of us to really honor the ideas that have been placed on our heart. I really believe in a higher power and that there's a reason I have an idea. And so if I have an idea, I never just say, "Oh, okay, could be a good idea," and then I just leave it there. I can't do that. I actually almost sometimes feel a little haunted by my ideas in a good way, but where if I don't take some step towards the thing to do and make the idea a reality, I just immediately start to get really frustrated. Like, I have to take some step, write it down on a piece of paper, or tell someone who you trust and love, "I had this really great idea." Just something that says, "I heard you. I acknowledge that that idea is there." That's the first step. Because there's a lot of people who can't even take that step because they're nervous and they think, "Oh, that was just a silly thought that I had." So try first and foremost to think of all of your ideas as important, sacred even. There's a reason you have that idea. The next part of that is, if it feels too huge, to just break it down. Every book you've ever read, any major project you've ever seen, just started with some words and a word following it and a word following it. And you just keep thinking of, let me just get one step closer, one page closer. The other thought I often have is, had I started this thing, like 5 years ago, I'd be 5 years closer. So start right now, start today on that one step. Stop thinking of, when am I going to start this? As an example of that, I always knew I wanted to be a storyteller and that I wanted to write books and get the opportunity to travel and speak about them and bring more people together in conversation. But I wasn't always able to make money off of that from the beginning, right? And so when I was a teacher, when I was a college counselor, I knew that I had to dedicate just as much time to the thing I really wanted to be doing as I was dedicating to the thing that was allowing me to have money for myself, for my family. And so I would come back home every day and I would write and envision the life that I wanted to have around this thing that I was passionate about and this idea that was so vibrant in my heart that I was supposed to write. And so I wrote my very first book doing that. It's a book that I actually haven't published, but it was the book that allowed me to meet my agent. And I sent her this book, and it's a novel. And she said, this is so clear that you're such a great writer. With a novel, we need it to be perfect. She's like, but do you have a nonfiction idea in the meantime? Because we can sell a proposal. And that first proposal was The Three Mothers. And so those steps, they will always lead to something, even if it isn't like, I thought that my very first book was going to be this novel. That hasn't ever even come out, but it led me to something. So remember that, have faith in that journey of like, take a step. Something really amazing is going to come from that idea that you have in your mind. And the last thing I'll say about it, because you talked about it a little bit, is how do you know if it's a good idea? If it's worth anything? A lot of people have this concern like, no one cares about that. No one's going to want to read that. I don't know. And I think a lot about my students. When I was a college counselor, I specialized in reading personal statements and helping my students craft their personal statements. And every student who sat down with me said, but my story is not that interesting. Like, why would I even want to know this story? And the thing is, truly, every story is interesting. You just have to believe that and therefore write it in a way that is compelling for people. A story about the sky is blue could easily turn into like a Pulitzer Prize winning poem that is symbolic of something else. And we all thought we were talking about the sky is blue, but then you took us on a whole other journey. And so every story is interesting. Every idea that's placed on your heart is sacred. Everyone has the ability to take one step at a time.
That's beautiful.
You are listening to the Do Better with Debra podcast with Dr. Debra Y. Griffith and her very special guest, author of Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us, Anna Malaika Tubbs. Stay tuned till the end of the podcast for more information on Ms. Tubbs. And now, back to the podcast.
What did you feel when you wrote the last page and you're like, I'm done?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The very first draft of it, I was just so thankful that I found like an ending point. Because the strategy in which I was, writing one chapter that led to the next chapter, that led to the next chapter, it felt like so beautiful. I hit that number 30, that there were going to be 30 chapters. It just all kind of worked out that there were 5 mini chapters and 6 parts and the conclusion. And I just had this moment thinking, I've done it. Like, this is the tool that I wanted it to be. It has all the elements. And that's, even before you get into all the edits, right? Because you're going to go back through multiple times to read it from front to finish and take out some things, add on some things. But just that very first draft, I knew this was going to be something that could really help folks. And a funny story is the first draft, I turned it in that day. It was the same day that the Barbie movie came out. So I went with a girlfriend to go watch that after I turned in this manuscript on patriarchy. And there were so many people around me in the theater who were crying after Barbie, And I thought, oh, wow, this is like their first exposure to patriarchy. This is the very first time they realized patriarchy is a problem. Well, then this book that I just finished writing is going to be even more important than I previously thought. So yeah, you just have such satisfaction and gratitude that you made it through.
You did.
Because the editing is easy. It's just that first draft that can feel so hard. And I always say with the first draft of anything, just write it. Don't even worry about like how it sounds. Just write and get almost to that, that goal word count. Because once you hit that milestone, you can always edit. And it's so much easier.
2 final questions. The book's been out for 4 months. You've been on a whirlwind. What has been the most impactful and touching moments that you've had that's been reflected back to you based on your words in the book or a speech that you gave or the book tour?
Oh man, there have been so many even already. In 4 months, it feels like so little time, but also there's been such a journey already. First, one reader told me that after reading the book, they realized that they're non-binary and that their whole life they have been, but that they didn't have the language or the tools to understand why they hadn't been able to step into that in the past. And I was crying hearing that because that's what this is all about. It's about our freedom. It's about understanding that our freedom has been taken from us on purpose, strategically, by design, and we should be able to live
Mm.
freely. So that was beautiful. I'm so grateful that my words could have that kind of impact where someone can see themselves clearly for the first time. And then also being in conversation with people who I so deeply admire, who have joined me on the book tour, Britt Packnett, Reshma Saujani, Elaine Welteroth, Lisa Ling, just incredibly powerful women who just, have told me that this mattered to them, that it was going to be helpful in their work too, is incredible. And lastly, I'll also say it's been really beautiful to see parents thinking about how they're going to parent differently as a
Mm.
result of the book. And so one particular interviewer was a man. He had a daughter on the way. And he honestly, most of the interview was just him talking about how he was going to parent his
Mm.
daughter because of the book. And so that is, again, like the ripple effect, the power of when you put a book out into the world, it takes on its own life in ways that you could never imagine. And um, I'll also say it's been really amazing as my second book to see people coming to Erased simply because they loved the three mothers so much. And that makes me really emotional that there's people who are supporting me and had seen my first book and were waiting for my second one and I can feel them cheering me on. And that I'm about to cry. That makes me feel very emotional. And it's my dream come
Mm.
true. So
Mhm.
excited to keep seeing where Grace goes. I see a book launch as like a year-long project. The beginning is very flashy, just like when you birth a child. It's like, yay, like all the things. And then the first year still really matters. Every milestone really matters. Really nurturing the life of that book, getting it in front of more people, continuing the ripple effect, the waves. Because if you give it that really solid chance in that first year, then it can just word of mouth. People are talking to each other. Each person who reads it might recommend it to 10 people. So that it's not just one moment that has a really big splash, but instead has a life of its own. And when I look at the three mothers, I just was looking yesterday because someone was asking for a link to it, and it has like 10,000 reviews. That's something that I never would have even dreamed of. That many people not only read it, but the ones who sat down to write something about it. Um, yeah. So these two book babies are just living their lives.
Very well. What's the dream now?
I really do. As much as I am always planning and focusing on all the other projects and the
Mhm.
ideas, because I have too many ideas because I see them as sacred. I get so
Mhm.
many of them. I also really think it's important, like on a day-to-day basis. I'm so
Mm.
grateful for this life that I get to live. I am really living in the dream of having a flexible schedule, right? Where I get to be with my kids and also write books and put out work that I hope helps people. And that I just continue to do that. So I think my storytelling is just expanding
Mm.
even more. And I'm really open to what that means in all the different directions. So I'm starting to, like, I've written two screenplays, and one is about The Three Mothers, and it's based off my first book, and we're developing that. And then another was just a rom-com. I had a really good idea
I can't
for
wait. I
a
love me a
romance.
rom-com.
I love a rom-com. It's very Black holiday rom-com. And yeah, I realized when The Three Mothers hit the New York Times bestseller list, it just felt like this crazy, again, dream come true moment. I then realized, like, oh, there is even more. I gotta set some different goals, and I think it's that I want to tell stories in any form that comes to my mind, that it's not only nonfiction, but that I could at some point sell this novel, and that I can sell a screenplay, and that I can continue to bring more people to the conversation in ways that are just accessible. And it's always about freedom
Mm,
for all of us.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for writing this book and sharing what needed to be shared. It gives me a
Thank
lot of different perspective now, where I was blaming myself
you.
and not looking at the system.
Hmm.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I felt a sense of relief after I read this book. I think the relief came from knowing that I wasn't crazy, that I did question things, but I just didn't understand them enough. That at times I felt like, is this me? Like, is there something wrong with me? But the truth is, there wasn't never anything wrong with me. I'm living in a system that wasn't created for me. And I want to thank Anna for this conversation and for her courage to write the book Erased. She reminded me and us that our stories matter, even in a world that tries to silence them. The woman in your book and the lessons you shared today shows us what it means to lead and to resist being made invisible and to leave something lasting behind. If this conversation spoke to you, share it with a young woman. Actually, share it with every woman of color, every Black woman that needs to be reminded that her voice is powerful. And if you have a story inside you, let today be the nudge that you start writing it down. Until next time, let's keep doing better together.
You've been listening to public speaker and storyteller Anna Malaika Tubbs. For more information on Miss Tubbs, look her up on Instagram or check out her website, annamalaikatubbs.com. Her New York Times bestseller, Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden From Us, can be found where most books are sold. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show, leave a rating or review, and share with a friend or colleague. You can always find Do Better with Debra on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and coming soon to YouTube. Thanks for listening.